Hello there. Yes, I'm doing another Spectrum video, so sorry if I'm starting to become repetitive, but quite excited about this one because this was my childhood computer. So, not this exact one, I mean that original one died sometime in the 90s, but yeah. I bought this as a replacement about 9 or 10 years ago, something like that, and it wasn't cheap. Now, normally I don't pay a lot of money for me retro items, but this was the computer I grew up with. This is the computer I learned to code on. This is the computer I played my first games on. So this was the model I really wanted, and I think I paid about just over £100 for it about 10 years ago, which is considerably more than I normally do. Although I think these go for a lot more than that now, even. Yeah. It was sold to me as refurbished. What the seller means by refurbished, I've no idea, but it does work, so I've not had any problems with it. It's had no modifications, it just runs off the RF. I did buy a RGB video cable for it, but that was an absolute disaster, and that's going back because that fell apart. So what I want to do with this is I want to go inside. I know the seller said it was refurbished, but I don't know what he's refurbished. So I think I'm going to play it safe, change the electrolytic capacitors. I might change the voltage regulator as well. I've got some genuine ST voltage regulators, so I'll bang one of those in. Give it a clean up. So I'll start taking it apart. So if you're not familiar with this model, it's case-wise, it's a Spectrum Plus case. Inside, they're quite a bit different. So the big things you're going to notice straight away is it's got this heatsink on the side of it. So this model has the nickname Toast Rack, which I've never been a fan of, I'll be honest with you. I don't know why it should, but it grates me every time someone says it. Because when I was growing up with this computer, it was never referred to as a toast rack, although granted I never knew anyone else who had this particular model. I don't know, it bugs me, but anyway. That's the big difference. So it's an exterior heatsink, so Spectrums generally have a reputation for running hot. Well, this should solve that problem. Other difference, you've got the 128K badge. Sinclair logo. That's in red, as it's black on the original. Round the side, the ear and mic ports have been moved to the side rather than the back. Reset buttons in the same place. There's an RS-232 with some sort of proprietary Sinclair connector. Looks like a phone jack, actually. Round the back, standard TV out. RGB monitor out, which is a new thing. And 9 volts in. And the same expansion port as well. Nothing around that side. Oh yeah. And at the front, we've got the keypad socket. Now, I don't think the keypad was ever released in the UK. I think the Spanish models got it, but yeah, that's what that does. Okay, yeah, so it was, Christmas 86 or 87, I think. Me and my brothers received our Spectrum 128. And we opened the box and, oh, it's a computer. Fantastic. Now, the only computer I'd used at that point was BBC Micro. And that was in school. So this is primary school, by the way. So we opened the box and we saw it was called the Spectrum, and I'd never heard of a Spectrum before. I knew my friend had a computer because he never shut up about it, but I couldn't have told you what it was. So I was aware of BBC Micros existing. I was aware of Apple because they were constantly advertising on the TV. And when I got back to school, I said to my friend, oh, I've got a computer now as well. He said, what have you got? A Spectrum? He says, oh, snap, that's exactly what I've got. And he had the Spectrum Plus 48K, as it turned out. So that was great. We were able to swap games with each other. It was it's a bit of a longer screw there. I'll just make a note of that. Yeah. So Christmas Day was spent on the 1 to 8 Spectrum. Right. Presumably, right, that heatsink's loose. If I just lift this up, and we're in. Just disconnect this membrane, if it'll come. Gently. I've bought a new membrane just in case, but ideally I'd like to save that for another project if I can reuse this one. So we'll see. Yeah, it feels a bit crunchy. There we go. That's away. Okay. Okay, so what are we looking at? There's a voltage regulator, bolts straight to the heatsink, as you'd expect. Now I've got a coil there, which looks like it's come detached. It's on some fairly stiff wires. It looks like it was stuck down at one point there, but it's come away. I'm tempted to leave that alone and not play with it, because I don't want to do any damage. The capacitors, they may have been replaced, but to me they look original. So I think I'll be changing those out. What have we got? Keyboard connector. Is that the RAM? Not sure. Ooh, there's a big chip with Amstrad written across it there as well. Now, I did crack my original one open back in the day. I'll stress you out with the story of that in a bit. There was nothing labelled Amstrad inside it, so maybe that's had a replacement chip at some point. Possibly, or maybe some of them just were built with Amstrad chips, I don't know. RF modulator reset. One thing I have noticed that's really quite striking is this is a much bigger PCB than the original 48K. So I've got one here, so one I use for parts. Yeah, do you know, it's not that much bigger. Just, yeah, it's a bit bigger, but we can see it is a radically different design. It's not an evolution of the same thing. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to root through my parts bin and make sure I've got all these capacitors. I think I should have. I'll start zipping them out. So how do I remove you from this case? Let's get these out the way. Let's unplug the regulator. And I can see two screws at the bottom. That can't be it, surely. Probably is. Let's try that. Let's just get this reset switch out. I am grounding myself, by the way. I mean, I'm not wearing a strap, but I do keep grounding myself. I'm not dancing on a nylon carpet, so should be fine. Okay. Oh yeah. There we go. Take this out the way. Okay, I think I've found all the capacitors I need, so I'm going to start buzzing these out. So, I'm just waiting for me tool to warm up a little bit. Okay, so one thing I never really do in these videos is use them as any sort of tutorial, because frankly, I'm only an amateur and I don't want to give people duff information, but desolder these capacitors now, and I'll show you how I do it, and you can decide whether that works for you or not. So, start by just introducing a little tiny bit of fresh solder, and this is fluxed solder. Just to get things moving. I've got one of these desoldering guns. It's only a cheap one. Just want to be a little bit careful with this. Right, has that got it? I'd say so. Okay. So 100 microfarad. That's a 16 volt. I don't have a 16 volt, but I do have a 60 volt, so it's getting that. So I don't think there's any harm going up in voltage ratings, just don't go down. Yeah, there we are. We'll just tack those in. Okay. Really need to get some smaller clippers. Okay, so I'm going to zip through and do the rest of those. It's the next day and the recapping is done. So I finished it yesterday, then I really had to walk away from it because it was an absolute pain in the neck to do. Every single capacitor had its leads folded flat against the circuit board, which meant desoldering it was a murder. There's some really big ground planes on it and made it very, very difficult, even with that electric desoldering pump I've got. Really difficult to get the capacitors out, but it's done. It's done. So I can put that to one side for a moment. Let's switch out this regulator. So how does that come out? So it's just a 7805. The replacement I've bought, it's another 7805 obviously, but it's one of the ST branded ones. So the cheap Chinese ones that you buy in bulk for next to nothing are absolutely fine, but I think they max out at about an amp, maybe even less. These ones should be good for 1.5 amps, so with the extra current draw that this machine takes, that should be absolutely fine. So let's see if we can get this heatsink off. Oh yeah, it just falls away. Yep. Oh yeah, it's just held on by a nut, so that's fine. Let's just move that. Pliers, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so it was Christmas Day, 86 or 87, when we set this thing up first, and we all had a little go, and none of us had really used a computer before, apart from the BBCs in primary school. And even then, we didn't have to do much with them. The software was already loaded when we came to use it, and I think there was... I remember 2 programs from that. There was one game where you had to press the right key, just teaching kids to learn the keyboard, I suppose. And the other one, Granny's Garden, which I think everyone played if you grew up in the 80s. Yeah. So where's my... There we are. Yeah, so this thing was set up for us on Christmas morning, and first thing I said to my parents is, let's put a game on. And I said, okay, we'll load one. And this will make you laugh. The term loading a game, that was kind of unknown to me. I wasn't familiar with the term at all. You got to remember, back at this time, I'd never used a computer before apart from the BBC. I'd never set one up. I'd never owned one. So all these terms were brand new to me. And it surprised me again when the software came on cassette, because I'd never seen that before either. So it's not like nowadays where you grow up learning computers, and I think if you're like me, if you're in your 40s, you might be able to relate to this. This was a brand new technology at the time. I'll just give that a little bit of thermal paste. In fact, let's put it on the back of the... Yeah, smooth it round. Yeah, it was a brand new technology, and the idea of loading a game off a cassette was new to me as well. So parents put it into the 48K basic mode and told me how to do it, and they said press J and load appeared, and the 2 quotes, and then I thought, well, what do I do now? Do I press play on the tape recorder? And I remember them saying, no, every time you give the computer a command, what do? You press enter. Oh, right, so these are all brand new concepts. So yeah, so we, which way did this go in? That way. Yeah, I've got thermal paste all over me now. Right, let's see, probably used too much. No, it's going. So yeah, the computer got some serious use after that. I mean, it was used every single day. I mean, every single day. From all weekend to whenever we got home from school, by one of us or all of us taking turns playing games. A couple more people I went to school with had Spectrums as well, so we'd swap games as well. Really was superb, and it was... say cutting edge technology, but it was you know, you had a computer in your home back then. You were almost posh and smug about it. Why isn't this tight now? So really enjoyed playing on the Spectrum all the way through primary school. By the time I got to high school, it was starting to become the butt of jokes, the Spectrum. So it was things like the Atari ST and the Amiga were starting to appear in kids' homes, and although I think they were still making the Spectrum right up until about, was it 1989 or 91 with the +3, something like that. So they were still making and selling them, but they really were seen as budget machines. And yeah, I think from being the cool kid with the Spectrum, I became the poor kid with the Spectrum in the end, and me and my brothers, well, we carried on using it. We absolutely loved it, but by the late 80s, it was starting to show signs that it had been used so much. I mean, the keyboard was becoming less responsive. The membrane was absolutely knackered. And the picture wouldn't stay steady. Of course, we were using RF, but the picture would not stay in tune, and it was one of these big old CRTs we had set up in one of the bedrooms, and you were constantly twiddling the tuning on the thing, trying to keep a steady picture, almost as you were playing the game, because the picture would wave all over the place. This thing was really starting to show its age. Right, so let me get something to clean off that thermal paste, because I think I've well overdone it there. Bear with me. I'll just give it a wipe with a baby wipe. Normally I'd just wash parts, but I don't want to encourage rust. So that'll do. Normally I would strip down the keyboard and I'd wash it, because usually the computers I pick up are pretty grim. This one not so much. This is quite clean, so I don't know whether to bother stripping it down and cleaning it or not. And I don't think it needs it, really. So let me just give this is a little dusty, just give this the once over. I'll just wipe things down, I think. If you are interested in how the Plus keyboards come apart, I did do another video with a 48K model. It'll be exactly the same as that, so if that's of any help. Yeah. So anyway, the one we had back in the day, it got to about 1990. I think I just started high school. And it was becoming unusable because the picture was terrible, the keyboard was unresponsive. The joystick interface had snapped as well, so one of us had fallen on it and landed on the computer and actually broke it and caused the computer to crash. So because we couldn't afford to buy a new one, we wrapped a load of elastic bands around it just to steady it, and then we had the joystick cable wedged into the heatsink to try and make it steady, and as long as you didn't move it or look at it too hard, you could play a game without it crashing. And it was like that for a long time, but eventually my parents took it to a computer repair shop, said, can you sort it? And they charged them money, but I'm not entirely sure what they did, because the picture came back nice and steady, but it was like that for about a week, and then it started failing again. I think they did put a new keyboard membrane in, because the keyboard became a lot more responsive again, but yeah, I mean, that computer business went bump like a week or two after that, actually. So anyway, yeah, and then it just sort of fell out of disuse, really, because after that my brother's got a Super Nintendo, I got a Mega Drive, and it got used less and less. The only person who used it at all was me, and it had come out every now and then for a game of something, Discs of Death or Jumping Jack or something like that. But yeah, I mean, by the time I was 12, 13, it was getting very little use at this point. So it spent most of its time in a drawer. Let's give this a little dusting while we're here. Doesn't need much. No real dirt in it. Alright, let's get this back on. Ah, yes, like that. Okay. So yeah, by about the time I was 14 or 15, I think, I had my Mega Drive, and that's what I used to entertain myself with. I thought it'd be a good idea to break out the old Specky. No one was using it. Now, at this time, it was very much in its sort of worthless stage. Any computer of that age was. There was plenty of Spectrums knocking about, but they weren't really worth anything because new technologies and new computers, new consoles were coming out. So it's a bit like the Nintendo Wii is now, I suppose. It's a perfectly capable system, but they're not worth anything because there's far better systems out there. You can pick up a Nintendo Wii for about £15 at the moment. Spectrum, yeah, it was very much very much in that category at the time. It was seen as the butt of jokes. It wasn't really worth anything. Everybody else had a better system and nobody was interested in them. So I still enjoyed playing it though. So it came out for a game every now and then, and of course, because the joystick port was held together by an elastic band, it kept crashing every time you knocked it. So I came out with the idea, which I regret to this day, of, oh, do you know what, I'll just hard solder it to the board. As you do when you're 14, 15 years old and you don't know better. And I did, and I must have crossed something, and I powered the machine on. And it gave me a whole bunch of mess and artifacting on the screen. Thought, ah, bugger, I've screwed it. Desoldered everything, and it was still doing the same thing. I didn't have the skills or the knowledge to repair it at the time, or the money. And like I said, it was effectively worthless, so it got put away. And I think eventually it got thrown out. So it was a real shame. But never mind. It's something I regret, but it happened. Right, I think we're all connected back up. This looks like the original membrane that's in this, so I don't know if this is going to go back in or not. Usually they don't. If it does, this would be the first one. Well, non-Samsung one anyway. Let's give it a go. It's actually plugging in without giving any crunching noises, so you never know, it might work. Ooh. Yeah, there we go. Is that lining up? Doesn't feel like it. Oh, yeah. Put the feet back in. Actually, do you know what? Before we do any of that, let's see if it still works. It better add do. So I'm going to connect using RF because why not? Right, so I just had a bit of a heart-stopping moment. I couldn't get the thing to power on. So I swapped the regulator for a couple more brand new ones, and then I put the original back in, and it seems to work fine. So maybe the slightly different pin out, or maybe I've just bought 3 Duff regulators, which would really annoy me. Maybe, I don't know, but it's working now. So the thermal grease there. So I've just replaced the original and greased it up again. Everything seems fine. Oh, right. Okay, so we're running on RF, which is exactly how I used to run it back in the day. And interestingly, well, to me anyway, the power supply running this machine is the original power supply from my childhood computer. And the only reason that survived and didn't get thrown in the bin is it was, they had the plug cut off, a new one soldered on, and it was used to power a shed alarm up to the mid-2000s, when the shed was pulled down and I rescued the power supply and recapped it, and now I use it on the bench, and it powers all of my Spectrums now, so that's what it does. That's the only original bit of that computer I've still got left, so yeah. Anyway, I haven't done much to this other than a recap. I don't think it needed it. Normally in these videos I go a bit more in detail and I strip them down and take the keyboard apart and wash it all out. It simply isn't needed, so I'm not making work for myself. Let's load a couple of games anyway and make sure it's all functioning correctly. Yeah, this would be a fairly typical setup back in the day. The computer with the joystick interface, which was loose, as I told you, and then jammed into the heatsink and connected to one of these awful things, which is all we had back in the day. There were far better joysticks than this, but this is what we could afford. So let's see if we can load something in. Power to it, that would help. Oh, RF lead would help as well. There we go. So let's see, what have we got? And my keyboard membrane's fine. It's fantastic. Okay, so a couple of issues that I'd completely forgotten about with this machine. Well, one issue that I'd forgotten about, one that seems to have developed. I tried loading a game and I wasn't getting any sound through the TV. So with the 128K models onwards, they don't have an onboard speaker. It goes directly through to the TV, so it's added to the composite signal. This machine's never done that. It's never outputted a sound signal at all. Excuse me. So when I plug in an external speaker, yeah, it's working fine. But for some reason it doesn't come onto the TV. Now I know it should, because the original one that I had did. And I'm not sure what the problem is there, so it could be that somebody's modified it to take the audio signal off the composite to give a better video signal. I don't know. It could be there's something that's failed. To be perfectly honest, I don't think I'm going to worry about it. If somebody knows what the likely issue is, and can let me know, and if it's something simple, maybe I'll take a look at it. But I'm really not that bothered, because I'm going to make up a lead anyway for the composite signal directly to the TV. So I'll take that from the DIN plug at the back. So it really doesn't matter, and I'll probably just use an external speaker anyway. Second problem is my membrane hasn't survived as well as I thought. There's a couple of keys that are dead. Most notably the brake key, because I tried to put the computer in its diagnostic mode, which you hold down the brake key and hit reset, and it wouldn't go. But yeah, the brake key, completely dead. So I'm going to have to put that new membrane in after all. So I might as well take you through it. So I've already unbuttoned the machine. Let's just unplug things and get that old membrane out. Okay, what have we got? These are fairly straightforward to fit. All of these out. There, that wasn't very difficult now, was it? Yep, seems fine. So now if I hold reset and brake, yep. Lovely. I'd say that was fine. Right, let's play some games. Yep, so this was me Christmas morning, and this was the first game I played on me new Spectrum. Which is probably why I keep banging on about this game. I mean, maybe it isn't very good, but I'm just looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. I don't know, but I love it. Didn't say I was any good at it, but I do enjoy it. Okay, so this was one of the games that came bundled with the computer when it was new. So it was this and Daley Thompson's Super Test 128K version. This game, it's a text adventure, The Never-Ending Story. I've been trying to crack it for the last 30 years and I refuse to Google the solution as well. So I come back to it every few years and have a little go at it. I've never quite gotten to the end and don't really care if I ever do. But you can see we've got the 128K music. Which grates after a while, actually. Yeah, it's a text adventure. Okay. That's enough of that. Thank you very much. Okay. So, yeah, it's... Oh, that music's starting up again, so let me unplug that. Okay. Yeah, so... There's a little look at the Spectrum 128. A little bit of history about the one I used to own. So, when I got it, it was a fairly popular computer. You were one of the cool kids if you had one. Had it for that long that it became the butt of all jokes. And from being a fantastic computer to utterly worthless to nowadays quite a sought after machine again. So yeah. So do regret getting shut of it when I did, that original one. But I've got this one now, so I'm quite happy. I think my next job with this is to make up a cable for the composite out so I can get a slightly better picture. Yeah. So also keep hold of your slightly obsolete tech as well, because you never know when it's going to become back in fashion and worth something. Because when my original computer died, they were completely worthless. Like I said earlier, it was a bit like owning a Nintendo Wii now. It's a perfectly good system, but it's not worth anything. So you can take that away with you if you want. Also, do you know what? Buy a Nintendo Wii because they're really cheap at the moment and I really like them, but that's totally separate. Okay, I'll wrap this up. Thank you very much for watching. I might have a little go of this game while it's loaded. In fact, I won't. I'm going to go and eat something because I'm really hungry, and then I might come back and edit all this video together. So anyway, yes. Really appreciate you watching if you've stuck through to the end. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.